What's up, YouTube? Welcome back. Today we are back at Thornhill Drag Strip with my dad's car behind us, picking up where we left off in the last video to do some more testing with this thing. So for today, like I said, to recap the last video, we're just going to drop the air pressure down from 11 to 10 psi, leave everything else alone, and go up there and see how it goes. So when we go up for, we're actually going to get 2 time runs today, so that's a first for a while. So it doesn't seem like there's a lot of people here. We should have be able to go a couple rounds hopefully. So hopefully this will be a good test session for us, and I'll turn this thing on when we go up there for our first time run. So going into that first pass there, the air is pretty dang good. And when the air is really good, a naturally aspirated motor is probably the most sensitive thing to air quality. So the thing is making a bunch of horsepower when it's good air like that, like it was. And the track was prepped better than I think what we expected it to be. So if you watch in the video there, you see that the tire wads up. It keeps the tire wadded through the first rotation and the front end's up and everything. And it looks like it's going to be good, but the tire's wadded up so much because the air pressure is so low that it folds the tire in the center and it makes it spin a little bit, and that's why it falls over and runs off. It still went 134 to the 60 foot, and it went a 614 out the back. So off the trailer, that's a decent run. Obviously the 60 foot needs improvement, but overall not bad as far as the rest of the run goes. It's definitely making the horsepower for it. So for the second run, I'm just going to put the air pressure back to the 11 psi that it was and change nothing else and see what it does. So that was a really nice run. That was a personal best 60 foot of a 129.2, and it went 389 to the 330, and it went 610 with a 3 out the back. So that's personal best 60 foot. That's getting close to personal best 330, and it's also knocking on the door of the personal best 608. So really happy with that run. You've seen that we tried the right lane that time instead of the left. And that was mainly just strategy for actually racing. If you get 2 time runs, it's always a good idea to make one in one lane and one in the other. So that way you kind of know what you're working with both lanes. But really great run, super happy with that. Once again, we're not going to change anything. We just, like I said from the past before, we just went up 1 psi on tire pressure. We're going to leave that alone. And we're just going to move into first round and see what this thing will do. another super repeatable run. Went 129.4 to the 330 or to the 60 foot. It went 388 to the 330, picked up a number there. And then it went a 608 with a 2 at 111.11 miles per hour. And that is the personal best on all fronts, on any combination that the car has ever been. So very happy to see the car working well and going personal best through and through. As you've seen there, the landing was a little rough. It sparked a little bit. Every time it sparks like that, it's hitting the oil pan. The oil pan's hitting the track a little bit. So for the next one, I just want to try to calm that down a little bit. So the only thing I'm changing is I'm just tightening the front shock extension 1 click, just to slow the wheelie down to where it maybe doesn't get as high. But it shouldn't have any effect on any of the early numbers. So if this thing goes 129, 60 foot again for 3 times in a row, I'm going to be very, very happy. So the air is actually starting to go back the other way just a little bit. It got the best that it was on our second time run, and then it's starting to go back the other way. But it's going back in such a small amount that I think it's still going to run consistently the same number. So we won that round. So we're moving into second round with only change being tightening the front shock extension 1 click. Unfortunately, we did not back up our streak of 129 60 foots. The track sat for a while. There was a breakdown, and in this time of year, with the track being by the river and the humidity comes in so quick and the track will fog over if it sits for a long time, it sat for long enough that I believe that the prep kind of went away, and so it spun a little bit and it went a 133 60 foot, and then it ended up going a 613 because it was, 4 numbers slow to the 60 foot. So a little deflating because I really felt like we were on to making consistent laps, and I'm not blaming the track going away. These are the conditions that we have to be able to deal with. So it just shows me that it's still sensitive to track prep. So we're, for the next shot here, for the next round, the only thing that I can think to do to try to increase the track prep on my end is to loosen the rear shock extension 2 clicks. So I don't like to go more than 2 click increments on rear shock extension, especially when I felt like it was close the round before this. So that's the only thing we're going to change. Loosen the rear shock extension 2 clicks to try to give it some more available traction when the prep goes away, and we'll see how it does on this next pass. So I gotta be honest, I really wasn't sure what to expect on that run. I was kind of thinking that it would work well, and I was kind of thinking that it would have little to no effect. But just like the pass before the last one, 2 passes ago, it goes 129 to the 60 foot again. This time a 129 with a 1, which is personal best. It goes 387 to the 330, personal best there, and a 608 with an O. So that is, once again, we re-best our personal best tonight 2 times. So I'm very happy that we have a consistent direction that we're going, but we're still not where we need to be. The goal of this car, as much as I love chasing ET, and I really want to make this thing run in the fives really bad, and I believe that we can do it, and I believe it'll get there. But the real goal with this car, and what my dad wants out of this car, is consistency. We don't necessarily need it to go 129 every time. It just needs to go something every time. If it's 130 or 131, but it'll do it at 90-degree weather when the track is terrible, or it'll do it super cold when the track prep is really good, that's what we're looking for here. We're looking for super consistency so that way my dad can bracket race this thing competitively. Right now, there's just no way to be competitive with the car because it'll be on a mission 2 or 3 times in a row, and then it'll throw out one that's 4 numbers off. And in bracket racing, especially with as competitive as it is nowadays, you can't be 4 numbers off on your ET. You have to be able to run the number every single time. So, sat and I watched videos, and I watched and I looked and I was trying to figure out, because honestly I was kind of bummed, and I was feeling like I was at the point where, man, these radials, these pro brackets just might not work for the surfaces that he's running on. We just might have to put a stiff sidewall slick back on it. But and it just killed my pride to think that, like, we're so close, and it's like, are we just really gonna give up right now? So I talked with my man JP, and we talked about some shock stuff, and he asked me, he's like, what's the car do when you push down on the back of it? And I was like, that's the one thing I haven't checked on this car. And that's something that usually on the trucks, you know, we kind of check, we kind of know how they want to compress and how they want to come back up. But on this car, my mind just wasn't even going there with it. And I was like, I don't know. And he's like, man, by watching this video, it looks like it's too stiff. And so I started looking at it and looking at it. And if you see, pick any video from this video, you'll see that the car tries to compress a little bit at the hit. Now, you can't fully pay attention to what the car is doing, because when the tire wads up, that'll make it look like it's compressing. But if you look at the top of, like, from the rim to the body, you'll actually see it try to compress just a little bit, and then it'll try to get back to ride height as it rides out. Well, that's kind of an indication that either we have too stiff of a spring on it because it's not wanting to compress enough, or we have the compression way too tight on the shocks. So I just went over to my dad's house and I took a video of just pushing down on the car, and 2 of us pushing down on the back of the car, we could barely move it. All right, are we ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. It's so stiff. 1, 2, 3.
I told you, I can't even move it.
So it's obvious that it's super, super stiff. And so what that tells us is that the reason it's so sensitive to track prep is because we're out of scope on the shocks. We're oversprung, we have too much spring, we're not allowing the shocks to do their job. So the tire has to do all of it. The tire has to do the whole job. So that's why we lower the air pressure 1 PSI, and it makes it mad. On good prep, it folds up and runs over itself. If you go up to the air pressure that it likes, but then the track prep goes away a little bit, it spins a little bit. It's because the tire is doing all of the work. So we loosen those shocks completely off on the compression. 100% as loose as they'll go. And honestly, it's still probably too much spring. But this will tell us if we're moving in the right direction. Loosen those way up, and then we actually loosen the extension up a little bit too. Normally, if you're making a big change on compression, like you're taking a bunch of compression out of it, making it super loose, you'll need to tighten your extension, because the harder it compresses, the easier it compresses, the harder it is for the extension to control that on the way back up. So you'll have to tighten the extension down. But what we see with being oversprung, it's gonna take away the work of the extension. And so it's gonna be harder for it to get back to ride height and to extend. So we loosen the extension. We're basically tuning the shock around the spring at this point. So if we go out and we have good results or better results with this combination, doesn't mean we're out of the woods. We probably need to put a little bit lighter spring on it. It's got a 135 pound, 14-inch spring right now. We're thinking that 120 pound spring sounds a little bit more proper for this setup. But that's what we're gonna do. We've got it all set up to do that. So this is kind of like one of those, not a shot in the dark. It's a very educated guess, and I believe that it is the correct way, but I don't expect us to go out and pick right back up on 129 60 foot. It's either going to do that, it's either gonna go out there first time and go 129 or 128 and look beautiful, or it's gonna go out there and go like a 138, 139, you know, because we're basically kind of starting over in some aspects of it. But sometimes you have to go backwards in order to go further than what you could go before. So the goal is not be so sensitive to track prep, and I truly believe that this is what the car needs, to not be sensitive to that, because the tire just has too much job. We need to take a little bit of job away from the tire and use the spring. If you've watched any of my four-wheel drive suspension videos or anything like that, you've heard me say that the tire is all that matters and that everything else is just a tool to make the tire do what you want. And right now, we're not utilizing all the tools in that toolbox to make the tire do what we want. So that'll be where we pick up at London this coming weekend when we go down there for the Mopar race. So stick around, guys, and I'll keep you up to date with all of our progress. The other thing that we might try to, that I haven't mentioned, is raising the launch RPM. Raising the launch RPM is gonna make more power, and it seems like that would be the wrong direction to go, but sometimes if you're oversprung, you gotta hit it harder to get the spring to do some work. So we might end up going up. We have a 4,000 launch RPM chip in it now. We might stick a 4,500 in that thing. It just depends on how it acts the first couple of passes out in testing this Friday. So stick around, and I'll have a full event coverage of our London experience coming for this coming Monday. So like always, guys, appreciate you watching. If you like what I'm putting out, feel free to subscribe, hit that like button, and also if you guys are interested in giving me some feedback on what you want me to make for hoodies this year, let me know in the comments here, and like always, we'll see you next time.